Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. We have participants all over the world, and we're excited to bring the Mayhem Production Recruiters Panel on VFX and Animation Production Careers, Recruiters Insights. So from wherever you are, welcome. I'm in Sydney, Australia, and would like to pay my respects and acknowledge the Cadigal Wangal people who are the traditional owners of this land that I'm coming to you today. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. It was, and always will be Aboriginal land. I'm Patricia Kung, and I've been working in recruitment for animation and visual effects for the last 20 years, and I'm also currently in education. So talking with Bree Ketley, who will be facilitating discussion, we realised that there hasn't actually been a specific recruiters panel on production management, well, not that we're aware of. Feel free to let us know if there has been. And people often don't know what production is or underestimate its value on a project. So it was a really great reason for us to gather some great minds to talk about this very important role. You'll see a Q&A box. So I've also, popped in the definition of a production assistant and coordinator in the chat. But you'll see the Q&A box, and as the discussion progresses, please feel free to put in your questions there. We've got about 15 minutes to answer questions live at the end of the panel discussion, and I'll also endeavour to answer some of your questions too throughout. So it'd be great if you could vote for a question, so upvotes, like if there's a similar one to the one that you would like to ask. And if unfortunately we run out of time, we'll answer those remaining questions with the recording that we'll send out to you in the next couple of days. I'll also apologize in advance if we have any technical issues, but fingers crossed it'll all go smoothly. I've already had a tech issue so far, so hopefully that's the only one. So I'd like to introduce you to your facilitator, Bree Ketley, founder of Mayhem Productions, and your panel, Samantha Dye, lead recruiter for RSP, or Rising Sun Pictures, Lindsay Cowie, recruitment manager for Framestore, Ben Owen, studio manager for The Yard VFX, Kirsty Parkin, founder and director of Superglue. Unfortunately, Indigo Cherry, senior recruiter for Flying Bark, is unwell and she extends her apologies. So over to you, Bree.
Thank you, Patricia, and hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Mayhem is super excited to host this panel, and I'm actually thrilled to share a little bit about my journey in this industry, just to give you a glimpse of what it can be like. Of course, everyone's path is going to be different, but I hope this gives you some insight into some of the highs and challenges of production coordination. So I've also been in the industry for over 20 years, and I actually started out as an editor on a children's animated TV show. And from there, I took my leap into production coordination at Animal Logic, and that's where my journey into production management truly began. One of the biggest highlights of my career was working on Legend of the Guardians. It was my first time as a coordinator, and it was my first time working on a feature film. And we literally had a blast making that film. One of the more unique parts of the process was attending owl school, where we got to learn all about owls and how they move, which was something that I actually never expected to do in my career. And as a result, I know a heap about owls. Another standout moment for me was managing Lego Star Wars, where we actually got to cast Anthony Daniels, the C-3PO. And Lego would send us boxes and boxes of Star Wars Lego to construct for reference, which was really cool. And it was obviously hours of fun for my crew, but as the production manager, I must admit that I did worry from time to time about how much time was actually being spent building that Lego for our research. One question that I am often asked by my students is, what is it like to work at a large studio versus a small studio? And in my experience, larger studios often have established systems that can really help you settle in and refine your skills. And often due to the size of the project and the number of people involved, you'll find yourself just focusing on one specific department, which is great because you really get to know that area inside and out. On the other hand, smaller studios offer a different kind of growth. You get the chance to work across several areas of the pipeline, which can really expand your skills and give you a broader perspective of the production process. So no two experiences are the same, and certainly no two studios are the same. With regards to the challenges of production coordination, one of the biggest challenges that I faced, and something that many new coordinators often go through, is the steep learning curve that comes with adapting to the role while you're already on the job. You know, you're expected to lead teams in fast-paced environments, all the while juggling the complexities of the studio pipelines and workflows. And it can definitely feel overwhelming, especially when everything's moving so quickly. Another challenge is breaking into the industry, of course. It can be really tough, especially if you are still building your coordination skills. And actually, there's some of the reasons why I started teaching production coordination at Mayhem, is because I wanted to help aspiring assistants and coordinators really hit the ground running and boost their chances of landing that first big opportunity. So with that in mind, let's hear about some of the other ways that you can prepare yourselves for success in this wonderful industry. First up, I wanted to talk about entry-level roles. And I'm going to throw this topic out to all the panelists because you're from different size studios. So, you know, what are these roles and how can you land one?
Thanks, Bree. I'm happy to take up the mantle. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this panel. I think it's worth starting off, and most of the panelists here, I'm sure, will agree, in acknowledging that the way to get into production management, whether it's visual effects or animation, varies greatly by studio, by country, by project even. And roles that might get you into a career in production management in Australia, New Zealand, or the US differ very greatly from entry-level roles within Europe, the UK, or France, for example. And by recognizing that, it kind of puts into context the answers that we will all have here. I know certainly from the European and the UK side of it, an entry-level role as a runner or a receptionist will typically be something people aim for in order to get into production. We know that the US has an internship culture where interns tend to get in there. And I'm sure it's different again between visual effects and animation.
Hi, everyone. I would echo what Ben is saying in that there are a lot of different ways to get into the industry. I was chatting with a few of our producers today, just getting a little bit of feedback on how they got started. And one of them was saying really just down to determination in, having had an interview where she wasn't successful and then continuing to reach out to the recruiters to let them know that she remained interested. She had another interview, which she also wasn't successful for. And then I think the timing just kind of aligned, the stars aligned, and, she was in their thoughts. And when there was another opportunity, it lined up perfectly. And now she's been with us for, 7 or 8 years. So I think sometimes it's persistence in keeping in touch with, those that are hiring for those entry-level roles. So at Framestore, those tend to be production assistants. And a lot of times we'll look for people that just have any type of production experience, whether that be on set, TV, theater. There can be lots of different ways that you can kind of flex those coordination and production muscles. So yeah, that would be kind of the way that we would the entry level position at Framestore would be that production assistant role.
Thank you, Lindsay. Sam?
Hi everyone, so I'm Sam, so the lead recruiter from RSP. So similar, I guess to Lindsay. So for RSP, entry level role would be like the production assistant role. I think Ben and Lindsay kind of already explained most of it. I think for me personally, or I guess RSP and maybe everyone else, how to get them, definitely perseverance, be kind to yourself. I think if we think about the entry level positions, job hunting, if you talk about the funnel of everyone trying to get in, and so I think the biggest thing, yes, perseverance, but, just knowing that it's, might not be, it's not yourself, that there's just a big load of people coming in. But also don't be scared that you have to start with industry relative experience. So yes, that would be ideal. But we know when we're recruiting that it's an entry level position. We know that you might not be able to get in. So any work is still better than none. And I know we'll cover it in some later topics, but transferable skills are huge. We're constantly looking at these things. So don't be afraid to, any work ethic, when you're building up your work portfolio is still better than none. So don't be afraid to, to find anything out of the industry. Doesn't mean you're moving away from it. Like I said, we know what we're looking for, and those transferable skills will still assist you in landing those entry-level positions.
Thanks, Sam. Kirsty.
Hi, I'm Kirsty. I run a visual effects, games and animation staffing agency here in Australia called Superglue. And our clients are, larger size studios, but also smaller size studios as well, where the process of getting through the door can be slightly different. Often people get in through sort of reception roles, through people they know. There isn't really a formal path. As you identified, Brie, there's no real sort of course in production like there is in other disciplines in visual effects, where artists might go and talk to their lecturer and go, who is the best 3D modeler in this class, so that we can take them on as a junior. So production is a bit different. Often recruitment is a way that people get in. They come in as like recruitment assistants and then end up on the floor as producers. The term producer means different things as well in different industries. So in smaller studios, you might come on board and be called a production manager, whereas in a larger studio, they would bring you in as an assistant. In games, the word producer means something very different than it does in sort of VFX. A lot of the times in VFX, people who've been producers in different related areas aren't necessarily considered producers when they come over into visual effects, because that denotes a particular level of hierarchy, which it doesn't necessarily in areas like post or animation or games. So the terminology can be quite hard to navigate. If you're talking to a smaller studio, it might, again, what you do might be broader. It might be, easier to get in, or you might go in through a different path. But I think what everybody is saying is, network, be proactive, don't give up, demonstrate that you're going to be a great employee. I think that's probably the best way to get in, to show people that they're going to love working with you and that you're going to be able to deliver and learn.
Thank you, Kirsty, and thank you to all the panelists. I think some really useful tips there. And one of the first steps to breaking into the industry, I guess, is understanding what types of roles there are and what you need to apply to or take notice of. So Ben, I guess we've kind of touched on this a bit in our first topic, but I just wanted to cover it again, because I know many people are really eager to learn about strategies for breaking into the industry and landing that first job, especially when they're still building that experience. We often hear about junior roles, and it's common to see job ads that label positions as junior, but still require years of experience. So Ben, I wondered, what advice you would have for those who are actually still building their experience.
Thanks, Brie. That is an interesting one. We've mentioned it already. That first step of the ladder into production is more often than not production assistant. It certainly is within the visual effects world. And getting that role as a production assistant or a PA can be quite challenging. There's a lot of demand for those roles. And depending on the project size, perhaps not many vacancies compared to the number of applications. Getting yourself noticed is really the goal. Once you're in that role, you've started on your career trajectory. But getting that role in the first place is about really showcasing the skills, the personality traits, the knowledge that will make you the right candidate when you don't necessarily have VFX or animation production experience to start with. As with any role, breaking it down into the requirements is key, and then identifying your skills and experience that showcase those skills that are needed. We all know that anyone going into production needs to be incredibly organized. So how can you show you have those organizational skills that tick the boxes? If you have Excel experience, great. But if you don't, those are skills that you can learn. I think we as recruiters are always looking for people who are proactive. And even if someone hasn't worked in an environment where they've gained those professional skills, they can still manage their own learning independently. Customer service skills are such a big part of being in production. You deal with people day in, day out, communicating with those individuals. So being able to communicate effectively and clearly and having good people skills are, in my opinion, a lot more valuable than someone who perhaps has specific experience of production but lacks those interpersonal strengths. Definitely the people skills always trump the professional skills, because you can learn some skills, others less so.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Those interpersonal skills are so important with any kind of team-based work and projects. Did any of our other panelists want to weigh in? Yep, Lindsay?
Just in addition to those interpersonal skills, which I would echo are incredibly important, the proactivity, the adaptable nature, and just really bringing your personality and customer service to the role. In addition, I think essentially production is project management. And so any skills that you can learn that are related to project management, ShotGrid is the tool that we use, but essentially it's a database. So if there's a way that you can learn another database and talk about that, again, just kind of think of those transferable skills.
Thank you, Lindsay. And is it the same across, Sam, please?
Hi. I guess, in like kind of addition to that as well, I know that I know some of our hiring managers, if it is your first kind of role and maybe you don't have that relative experience, some like cover letters are amazing for us to kind of, for you to showcase a bit more about you. Like, yes, we can see the resume, we can see all your skills, but I think we also look for that personal touch. And, without getting that interview, that's another way for you to kind of bridge that together as, don't be afraid to say why you're passionate, or, I don't know, you grew up with, family in VFX, and that's the thing, that's a way for you to get that personal touch before that interview. So, I would say that I know that we look at cover letters at RSP for those entry-level positions. So that's another little strategy.
And do you, I'm throwing this out there to anyone. Is it the same across small studios and large studios?
Oh, no, Kirsty, please go ahead.
Sure, okay. Yes, I would say it is. Because I run a staffing agency, actually people rarely come to me looking for entry-level people. They can usually find those people themselves. That studios get a lot of applications, or people who have friends, or people who want to break into the industry. So it's rare that they'll reach out and go, hey, can you find us a production assistant? If they do that, it might be because if they were going to advertise themselves, it might become too overwhelming from an application point of view. So that is sometimes an opportunity where we will jump in and go, okay, well, we will manage that applicant flow. Again, it's just about, I would say, persistence. If you do apply, don't be afraid to follow up with a phone call. No one does that anymore. But if you do that, not only are you demonstrating that you can speak to someone on the phone and you have those interpersonal skills and that you're not afraid to follow up, it actually makes you stand out from an applicant flow where you might have 150 applications. I remember an incident that happened when I was actually working at Rising Sun, maybe a long time ago, 10 years ago, and we decided we needed somebody. And we thought, oh, we'll just throw it out there. You know, we just want the right person. And there was about 200 applicants. And there was one woman who not only applied 3 times, she called twice to follow up her application. We interviewed her. We were completely flat out. We were so busy, we didn't have a chance to interview her properly. So she sat in a stool in the middle of the room while we all worked and interviewed her at the same time. I felt really sorry for her. Not only, I should go back then for a second interview, I think. Not only did she get the job, but she's now risen through the ranks and works client side at a very senior studio. And every time I see her name, I remember that interview, and I remember that she was the most persistent person and the only person who followed up with a phone call. So follow up with a phone call. It really does make a difference.
Yeah, I guess people get worried that they'll be looked at as if they're, they're hassling or being a nuisance. So that's really great advice. I wondered if we could just go back to the junior roles, because this is a question I get asked so often by students. They feel reluctant to apply for a position that is advertised as junior, yet it's asking for years of experience. Would anyone be able to, should they apply? What's the deal with this?
That's something I've seen come up, where they say junior, but it's not really an entry-level position. It may well be junior in terms of skills and experience, but it's still looking for those skills and experience. So always, as a candidate, you want to be looking at roles that do match the skills you have and being able to match the relevant experience you have to the role in question. And if you don't feel it matches perfectly, I don't think it should put someone off applying, but acknowledge that perhaps those skills and experience aren't quite where the role requirements are yet, but that you're interested in that as a position and would welcome any feedback that would assist you in your career. And that may end up leading to a conversation about alternative roles, ones that might be leading into the role that you want to get into. I mentioned the runner position earlier. This is something, especially in the UK, that's a very typical route into not just production, but artist positions, or in fact, any junior role on a team. By coming in as a runner, you have access to all of the departments within the studio and the knowledge, and inevitably, you will be considered for those positions when they come up. Larger studios have bigger teams of runners. Smaller studios may only have 1 or 2. So career progression does differ between the size of studio you work at. But it's not just running. You could be a reception role that we've also touched on before, a data admin role, or studio support. Those are positions that don't require specific knowledge of production, but can get you a foot in the door, and most importantly, access to the people doing the roles in production that you're interested in going into.
That's great. Thank you, Ben. So I feel like, we've covered kind of what these entry-level roles are and talked a little bit about, what it means to be a junior versus entry-level. What about, the career pathways? I think it's useful for people to understand. So they start here, but where do they end? And I thought, Kirsty, since you've worked with studios nationwide, could you share some insights into the career pathways that are available?
Sure, happily. I mean, if you look at some of the people who run some of the studios in Australia, they began in production. So producers end up really running businesses. That's if they're good, and if they progress through the ranks, they end up, honestly, in some cases, being the most powerful people in those studios. So in the end, producers are project managers, but they also can, if you go down the right pathway, be business managers. So they'll end up bidding for work, they'll end up breaking the shots down and working out how much each part of the show is going to cost. They can end up working really closely, with the heads, the creative heads, to work out, which shows are even going to be taken on, and the strategic direction of the studio. So you start off as a production assistant, a production coordinator, and then depending on the kind of studio you're in, you can be a line producer or a show producer. You can then go up into like a production manager, and then from there into like an associate producer, and then a producer, and then a production supervisor. And then if you're really cool, you just end up running the whole thing. You can be a bidding producer as well, which is more of a sales focus. So if you're a bidding producer, they often ship you off to the US, where there are a whole bunch of people. Like this week, there are a whole lot of Australians over in the US sitting around drinking beer together, trying to schmooze all of the studio heads and bring back the work to Australia. So producers can be involved in doing that as well. So the sky is the limit. There's lots of pathways you can go down. You can go down management, HR, those sorts of more people-focused, artist management, scheduling. There's so many different pathways you can go down depending on the size of the studio, and the particular focus that your studio has. But it's a really fantastic career for anyone who has an interest in keeping things organized, in people, or even business. A lot of producers end up going and studying business degrees, or later on in their career, once they realize that that's a pathway that can be taken. Or if you have an interest in that and you come from a business background, it can be a great way to apply those skills in this industry.
Thank you, Kirsty. And I can relate to having started off as a coordinator myself, and I'm now running my own business. And education is obviously, who knows, the sky's the limit where you can end up. I wondered for the other panelists, is there a typical structure? You start as an assistant, you then move to a coordinator, you become a senior coordinator. What is that structure? Lindsay.
Yeah, I would say for Framestore, it's very similar to what was mentioned. So starting as a production assistant, moving up into coordinator. The next step for us would be as a line producer, and then associate producer, and then executive producer, which would be much more on kind of that bidding and client side level.
Thank you. Is it the same, Sam, for you?
Yeah, so similar, I guess similar in between that. So, the production assistant, coordinator, do have some levels. It's not like usually like we wouldn't, I guess, go out to market for senior because we want that internal progression, but you could be that senior coordinator level. And then we have the associate production manager, and then the POPM, and then, producing from there.
And is it the same across the UK and Europe?
Yeah, absolutely. We have very much the same roles, progressing from production assistant through coordinating, line producing, associate producing, and producing in VFX, but not necessarily on every project, because it very much depends on scale. You might find that a big visual effects project will have a producer, an associate producer, and potentially multiple line producers, coordinators, and PAs. On a smaller project with perhaps a less complicated workload or less shot count, you might just have a producer, a coordinator, and an assistant. And that's where the learning really comes from on a career path, because if you're on a smaller show, you may find yourself being tasked with responsibilities that you haven't been tasked with previously. If a show doesn't have a line producer, often the coordinator will be picking up those tasks and responsibilities. So that actually comes back to your question earlier, Brie, about bigger and smaller studios. Often a smaller studio might be able to afford you opportunities that a bigger production structure wouldn't necessarily have.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really interesting. A lot of people don't realize how many different types of production roles there are. They just kind of think, oh, it's a producer or a manager. They don't realize all the in-betweens. And there is plenty of opportunity for growth in the role. I wanted to talk about, it's a notoriously competitive industry and a very sexy industry. Lots of people want to work on animation and visual effects, on films, on TV shows. We live and breathe it and we love it. So I wondered, how do you stand out? And we kind of covered it a little bit earlier, but I I wanted to refocus back on that. And Lindsay, I wondered, what are some practical steps that aspiring coordinators, assistants, can take to differentiate themselves? So things like, tips on resumes, transferable skills, building connections, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think any way that you can just build your connections and networking. So whether that's just researching the companies that you're interested in, contacting their recruitment team, just starting to kind of build those relationships, make your name known, and don't necessarily assume that because you've reached out once or applied once that is enough to to have them remember you. I do think some kind of polite, professional, but regular follow-up can actually go a long way. I think sometimes with these roles, it can kind of come down to timing and, just kind of being in the right place at the right time a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think as far as the things that we would look for, obviously, someone who's personable, that's able to kind of bring their personality, their relationship building skills, someone I think that just shows that real interest in the industry, and I think also someone that kind of has an honest um, awareness of kind of what the role involves. So for us, it's amazing. You get to work on lots of interesting projects. You get to sit in dailies and reviews and see these wonderful films come to life. But it's also, it is hard work. It's long hours sometimes. It does require a lot, I would say, from our junior production staff. So just kind of, I think, an awareness of what those roles entail. Do your research. I think also if you can research, at least for VFX, what does a VFX pipeline look like? Familiarizing yourself to with those departments. So if it's not something that you've had exposure to, at least you have kind of an understanding of, how a shot moves through the pipeline and some of the different departments that you might be working with. So there's some things along the way that you can do, but I think just, persistence is key, I think.
I absolutely second what Lindsay said there. When it comes to networking, it really is about the balance between the right approach, the right people, without taking it too far. But there are resources out there. Networking is a tool, just like social media, and having a strong social media presence. LinkedIn, I think all of us use that daily, especially as recruiters. And studios ultimately want to find the best people to join their teams. So a recruitment team should be accessible. Information should be on those studios' websites. And although recruiters are busy, if you reach out to them with questions or to make that connection, ultimately they will be able to come back to you and start sharing information and hopefully be able to line you up with a suitable role. There's also organizations globally, such as the Visual Effects Society, or in the UK, you have Access VFX, that's very much geared towards entry-level opportunities, as well as events. We all know SIGGRAPH as an event that takes place in North America. FMX happens in Europe every year. Networking events can give individuals access to people that they wouldn't otherwise encounter until they're working within a studio.
That's great. Thank you. Did any of our other panelists? I think, Sam, your hand is up.
Yeah, I was also going to say maybe, keep in mind, we already mentioned we're funneling, potentially hundreds and hundreds of applications, and sometimes there may be one recruiter looking at that role. So for me personally, a rule of thumb, I kind of say, a recruiter might have seconds to look at your resume. Again, we know it's an entry-level position. Don't feel pressured to have a 3-page resume or, have all these, have it all cluttered with all this information. We kind of dart and know what we're looking for. So simplicity in terms of these key things. There are tools online like Ben mentioned, if you can go in like a Seek, I don't know what it would be in North America or EU, but seek.com.au, there are a lot of, if you're building your resume for the first time, there are resources out there that can, that can help you utilize this. So from a that practical sense of, okay, well, how can I get someone's attention in 5 to 8 seconds? That's just something that I would kind of do there. If you're kind of finding it hard to find your location, use your resources around you. Say, if you look at this resume, it's easy to see where I'm from, what my last education was, what my last job was within those couple of seconds. Then that's, something, a top tip, personally.
Thanks, Sam. Kirsty.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate what Sam just said. So recruiters can often be recruiting multiple roles to very, very, very tight deadlines and dealing with many resumes and real links and folio links. And we don't always have time to get back to everybody. We don't always have time to give feedback to everybody. If you can imagine a situation where you need to hire a production assistant in 3 weeks' time and there are 150 applications, you can't get back to all of those people with specific feedback on why they didn't get the job. So what I often tell people is that at entry level, it's never about you. The reason that you didn't get the job is never about you. It's always about timing and persistence. And if you went to an interview and you didn't get the job, it really isn't a reason to think, oh, well, I'm never applying there again. Apply in 3 months' time. 3 months is a good time to sort of leave it before you sort of reapply. And I know it can seem daunting to continually put yourself out there and try and get this first job, but actually all through life, we continually put ourselves out there. We all put ourselves out there every single day. I run a business. I put myself out there. I try and get clients, and sometimes I get them and sometimes I don't. That's a networking risk in itself. So it's a good thing to learn. And if you can learn it early and nail that job, then, give it a go. But we can't always give you the feedback that you need. In Australia, there's a really fantastic site called The Rookies, where artists can get feedback. I'm not sure if they give production people feedback on their resumes or not. But, I'm sure that Brie, you can tell us about your course where potentially young production people can get feedback. But yeah, just understand that we don't always have the time, but that doesn't mean we don't care and we don't want you to succeed. We very much do.
Thank you, Kirsty. What types of skills and experience, should people highlight on their resume for these entry-level type roles? Sam.
Guess I kind of similar think of what my question would be towards the end. Feel free. We kind of mentioned this from the top to bottom. So, kind of highlighting if there are things that you can, if you have obviously transferable skills within maybe ability to work within timelines, if you have a fast paced environment that can go from, retail to hospitality to, whatever it is. It's, that's why I said, don't be afraid to, if you're working night shift up, wherever it is while you're studying, that's great because you're building up that, work portfolio. We've said it before, if you are in a place where you can communicate with different stakeholders, that is huge. We talk about communication. The more you go up the ranks, you're talking levels from artists, seniority, whatever it is. If you have that in your job role, that is a key stuff that we look for as well. This is kind of something we can always train, as Ben mentioned, but if you have administrative skills, the ability to, organize and how you do that, if you can show, because as, everyone has said, it is a high pressure environment. There's a lot of multiple tasks and things that you're always going to be doing. I mean, every job, whatever industry, you're always going to be managing tasks and, different priorities. So I'm sure if if you're in a position that you have work, those are the top 3 things already you can say, in my job, I do this and all of that. So those are things that I look for.
Thank you, Sam. So I thought, given that we have a panel of recruiters, I'm sure that you're all eager to hear about what recruiters want. And I know it's like this has been a little bit covered throughout, but Sam, just throwing this back to you again, what are the key skills and qualities that studios are actually looking for in potential candidates? You've mentioned a little bit about what to highlight on a resume, so I'm sure that kind of points to some of the answer to that question. But just if there was anything, anything else.
Yeah, of course. I guess I just already answered some of those main things, and I'm sure maybe I've missed some of the other, key maybe skills that the other panelists can mention. But I think in a way, when I speak to the hiring managers, some of the feedbacks I'm getting is, I'm not sure why, I can't see as to, why they want to get into it. What is it behind that they want to get into it? A lot of the time we are investing, we can teach skills. We can teach shot grid. We can teach, how to, book a calendar meeting if you haven't done that before. But what we can't teach is, that eagerness to learn. What is it that actually is about it that you're going to go through that chain? I think Lindsay mentioned before, if you understand the role and what comes with it, what is that? And do you want to be a PM? Sometimes people don't want to be a producer. They enjoy the organizational and the more project management sides, but some people want to go into producing, and that's okay too. So again, a lot of it is that reasoning behind it, which again I mentioned, that cover letter. If you can do that, I think sometimes, again, from personal experience, there's a resume, but potentially you might have been overlooked because someone else had a cover letter that gave that personal interest, and it's like, well, they that versus that resume. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else anyone else wants to add, but that's just a summary of what I would look for.
Thanks, Sam. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. I second that. It really is about matching the right person with the right environment, and every studio is unique. Certainly the Yard, being a mid-sized VFX studio, is looking for different qualities and traits to a very large VFX studio, or a 4 or 5 person facility that can give great experience, but again, has a different set of requirements. You want to get your personality and really impress on people what it's going to be like to work with you. So don't be afraid to put some personality into the application. That doesn't mean you have to be out there and crazy in terms of your expressions and your fonts or your CV, but bring yourself into it, because ultimately that's what we want, people to be their genuine selves within our studios and in an environment that enables them to thrive. Again, it's a hard thing to say, these are the things you should absolutely do. But it gives you a flavor of what people are looking for, certainly in my case.
Thank you, Ben. Kirsty.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's also important to remember that your resume is evidence. So it's evidence of what you have done previously. And if you really want the job, make sure that the evidence, which is your resume, matches the evidence, which is the job description. So if the job description has been built well by people who genuinely want those skills for that job, they will list what they want you to have. So they'll list that they want you to have shot grid experience. They'll list that they will want you to have worked on sort of photorealistic live action, but so they will tell you what they want. So it's okay to build a particular resume for a particular job. And in fact, it's the best way to do it, to have like a base resume and then go, oh, I'm going to apply for this job over here at Flying Bark, which is going to be fully animated, versus this job over here at RSP, which probably isn't. So you can tweak your cover letter and your resume to make sure that it reflects what you think that studio might be looking for. And if you're not sure, have a look in the job description. The job description or the job ad or the job posting should tell you exactly what that studio is looking for. So make sure that you don't just have a generic thing that you put out there. Make sure that you read the job description and build the evidence, which is your resume, to match the requirements, which is the job description or the job posting.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsty. That's some really solid advice. Sam.
Sorry, it only just kind of like reprint when we talked about, that personalization. And I think, just something that can happen. And I understand you might be applying a lot, but definitely, proofread, your application when it comes to it. Look, it happens, and it's not like something that we go, oh, that person, but I think, sometimes when you're making it personal and you're saying, I'm really excited to apply for, this company, I have, seen it where potentially it's been for another company. And, I get it, we're all human, make mistakes. I'm just, I think that proofreading, and if we say attention to detail, sometimes that application in itself is already the start of your application in terms of your attention to detail. If you're note taking and things like that. So see your application as also from I guess that practical typing part of how we're seeing how you potentially be and bring that forward. So don't be scared to just, okay, before you, I know I do that. Before I even send it, I'm just like proofreading it and do all of that. Take that breather, take that step. Especially if you've been applying all day, all week. Like I said at the very start, be kind to yourself, take that breath, don't be afraid. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. And look, just very briefly, before I throw it out there to Patricia with the Q&A, where, all this talk about jobs and job applications, where do we go to find the jobs? Are there particular websites, resources? How do they access, where the jobs are being advertised? And this is for any of the panelists out there.
I guess for Framestore, it would be either on our website and always on LinkedIn. I believe our job site also will feed to other sites like Indeed and things like that. But yeah, always LinkedIn and our website directly.
Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, thanks, Ben.
Same thing. The first port of call for any information about vacancies, whether current or upcoming, would be the studio's website. LinkedIn is where those vacancies are broadcast. So connecting and following a studio on LinkedIn. If you go onto LinkedIn, you can follow The Yard, you can follow all of our studio's social posts there. And that's when you find out that something's coming up, and you can then apply or create profiles on the recruitment site. Often, if you don't see a vacancy that matches what you're looking for, you can create a profile and have alerts come to you as soon as those vacancies arise. So don't be afraid of registering on all of the websites that you can, and then you'll be notified as soon as something suitable is available.
Thank you. That's great. All right, I'll take this opportunity to throw it out there to Patricia and see what other questions we have from our attendees.
Okay, so I did try to answer a few of them, but most of them, or all of them, are really great questions. So I will actually go with the most voted and work from there. Apologies, I answered some and didn't realize it was still going to be go to answered rather than closed, but I'll flick back and forth. So Marie wants to know, writes, hello, I'm a 3D animator and VFX student. Do you think having skills and knowledge in 3D software makes it easier to land a job in production? Also, I was wondering, how can a portfolio be tailored for production management roles, especially if it's more organizational than creative? So I am going to throw that to Lindsay.
I hope I answered this correctly, but if I missed any of it, let me know. I think we often see a lot of production people that maybe start as artists and then throughout their studies or their experience, they discover, oh, actually, I really like the organizational side of things. I like that production piece. I like to be the one kind of making it happen. So in short, yes, I think absolutely there are roles and opportunities for people that have that understanding of animation or, the artist side of things. Absolutely opportunities to get into production if you feel like that's a better alignment with your skill set. Apologies, Patricia, was there a second part?
No, oh, sorry, with the portfolio, if there is a portfolio to be tailored for production management roles?
Maybe the other recruiters have thoughts on that. I guess to me, they would be sort of two different things. I guess the animation portfolio would be more guided at someone who is interested in animation. So for me, I don't know that it would be as relevant for a production role, but I don't know if others have thoughts on that.
No, I would agree, but I just wanted to see whether or not that was had a different answer. This one's actually for Bree. So anonymous attendee says, I have some prior work experience of working as a production assistant, and one responsibility that I often struggle with is taking notes quickly and accurately. So the question is, what are some of the tools and techniques that have you used to complete this task with? And in fact, as recruiters, we also take notes. So if any of the other recruiters want to jump in, but I thought I'd start with you first, Bree.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It's a really good question because, yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah, you have to multitask. So practice. You just practice. Sit and type anything. Type the TV. Do a typing test. I learned typing through high school, so I was naturally able to type quickly. But note taking, it's not just about taking every word down. There's a real art to it. It's about listening to the direction, because when you are in dailies or review sessions, lots of people can start talking all at once, and it can become quite confusing what the directive is, what the note is. So the art is the ability to just, amongst all that chaos, distill it down to what the actual feedback is and write just the feedback. I often start with, yeah, it looks great. And then I just write the feedback. I'm not writing everything else around that feedback. And if you are confused, always take that opportunity to seek clarification on what the exact feedback is. They would rather you ask, and they will quite simply just say it in 1 or 2 sentences that you can easily type. They would rather you ask than get it wrong and set somebody off on a confusing path. Obviously, you don't want to ask at the end of every note, but it's practice and the ability to, just see the clear feedback amongst all the chit chat. Did anybody else have anything else to add?
Yeah, I would just like to add that I've always been an appalling note taker, and for years filled notebooks with pencil scrawl that only I could read. And that I'd have to go back. I always knew where the bits were in the various books, and I was never very good at it. But what I have discovered through the uses of technology, that now I can actually have an interview where I'll still take my appalling notes, but I've got a system where at the end of each interview, I will speak the key points into like either my phone, or I use a recruitment system that has voice operated note taking. So I speak that in and then reorganize it, and it has changed my world. So I think you could potentially do something like that. You could still take your notes and then go away and reorganize them. And for me, it's just made everything I do feel cleaner and clearer and more professional. And for me, that's really helped. For someone who's not a natural note taker, I feel your pain. I'm not a natural note taker either.
Okay, thank you. So the next, sorry. We've got amazing questions. There was a question about the sites that the recruiters have spoken about. We'll add that with the recording. We'll send that through to you. One general question, which was about remote or hybrid for production coordinators. So if everyone wouldn't mind saying what they've come across or how their studio works with whether or not it's a remote employment within for production coordination or just generally, or if it's all on site or if it's hybrid, that would be great. Ben, do you want to start?
Absolutely. Hybrid is very much the way that the yard works. However, there's a huge value in having people together. So as we navigate our way post-COVID, it's about finding a balance that brings people together as much as possible, but still gives people that flexibility to be able to work from home, and also the tools to be able to do that. Jumping into meetings, being present, whether you're at home or in the studio, and feeling just as connected is vital. But certainly hybrid is the way forward.
Sam? Oh, Lindsay, sorry.
Sorry, I couldn't have said it better than we are hybrid, and I absolutely see the value in production staff being in studio as much as possible, especially while you're learning. I think there's just a lot to be gained from being in person, but yes, we are hybrid as well.
All of my clients are insisting that juniors work in the studio now. So they might make exceptions for, I guess, really senior staff who aren't located in the state where their main studio is located, but with juniors and particularly production assistants and production coordinators. I work with a couple of different studios, and juniors and entry level, it's like, no, you come into work every day. So that seems to be the direction that things are moving here.
And Sam?
Yeah, so I would say definitely for PAs I'll start with, as an organization, we have a hybrid workforce. However, when we are recruiting for PAs, we usually start with saying that it is in studio, because I think, as everyone probably agree with, you're shadowing, you get all those experiences by shadowing, and all those conversations that you won't get I guess working remote, and your learning is just by like twofold so much better on site. Of course, if there's circumstances where you were to come back and go, well, actually these are the circumstances, could be one way, one day a week or whatever it is. Of course, if you're the right person, we would accommodate that. But definitely, if you are in that PA position, we definitely just start with, look, it's in-house, in office, and then coordinator. I think depending on your experience, that again is that hybrid flexibility workforce. Yeah.
When you're building up relationships with artists, clients, fellow production crew, it's so much easier to establish those relationships in person, face to face. That doesn't mean that people are in the office 5 days a week, 10 hours a day. That's where the flexibility comes in. But as a junior, someone starting, your experience is so much improved and advanced by being next to the same people who have that experience.
Great. I know we're almost at the hour, but our panelists have agreed to stay on for a little bit longer. So we'll go through a few more questions. So if you would like to stay on as participants, thank you so much. And but we'll try to get through as many as we can. This is a very popular, important question. There are not a lot of jobs advertised in general for production and animation. What are your thoughts on cold calling or emailing recruiters to put yourself out there, and what to do if you don't hear back? I think we did cover this, the panel did cover this a little bit, but I think one of the things is that, as you all said, when it's a junior role, you do have this influx, and sometimes I know for me, we would approach the schools, or we would go through the database first. But how Kirsty, do you want to talk about, the cold calling, especially now that you've started your agency, of people, because you will advertise, but you've certainly got a lot of contacts out there and you're known. What are your thoughts on cold calling, and if a role isn't advertised for production, or emailing those recruiters and putting yourself out there, and what to do if you don't hear back? Like, you touched on that, but if you wouldn't mind reiterating, that would be great.
Yeah, I think if a role isn't advertised, you're always welcome to send an email and say, hi, I'm really interested. And that's that sort of keenness that, I think Sam and Lindsay both touched on. And, I know you're not advertising, but this is, who I am, and, I'm really keen. And I think an email is a great way to do that, or definitely reach out and connect on LinkedIn. That's another great way to do that. And then you can say who you are. And, if the recruiter will probably accept your connection, but they may not immediately get back to you. So just don't be off-put by that. You can be as proactive as you like, but if they're not actively recruiting for your role, they probably won't get back to you, but they may remember you. So, you can politely stay in touch. You can reach back every sort of 3 months or so via LinkedIn. You can like and comment recruiters' posts. Most recruiters are quite active on LinkedIn, because we have to be, because we want to attract the right kinds of candidates. We also reach out to specific roles when we need to. So we're very, very active on LinkedIn. If you like our posts and comment on our posts, then we notice you, even though we might not be looking for your exact role right now. So I like, if you've applied for a role and, you haven't heard, if you want to, I don't mind a follow-up phone call, only because no one ever does it. It's like, it would be amazing if someone did. I'd be shocked. So, people have different preferences around that. Networking is amazing, but if you are networking, just be really mindful that a lot of recruiters get completely swamped at networking events, and it can be quite hard and tiring for us. I know that sounds like, oh, well, poor us, but it can be quite daunting to sort of go to a recruitment event and there's like 50 students and you think, oh no, I'm not even going to make it to the bar. I'm just going to be here talking to these students all night. And we love it. We do love talking to students, but just be mindful of the fact that, we might not necessarily immediately have a job for you. We can't necessarily give you half an hour's worth of advice on your resume right there and then. So just be aware of that, and, you know, be aware of what we need to do.
Okay, we might do just a few more questions. We've had someone in America who's gotten up very early for us, so we really appreciate that. Let's see, gosh, there's so many questions. No, we've sort of answered that.
Kirsty,
So
you're
one
going to
of
start getting
actually,
lots of calls. Oh, sorry, PK, I was just filling in them.
so one of the actually the questions is, if I'm sort of condensing a few, if you're interested in production but you can't get a role in production, could you still take on another role within the industry? So Ben, would you like to answer that?
Absolutely. Any role that's going to give you the skills that you need to go into production is going to be beneficial, whether it's in the industry or not. If something will help you hone your organizational skills or your interpersonal skills, enable you to communicate better with all different varieties of people, those are really solid skills that will help you. And certainly when looking at a resume or a CV, that's something that stands out. That's something that we look for. Within the industry, by all means, we touched earlier on artists moving into production roles. Anything that gives you industry experience is incredibly valuable. So if you get in as a reception role or a data management role, those are entry-level positions, but not necessarily into production. They'll give you invaluable experience of a studio, of the working environment that you want to become a production person within. So yeah, absolutely. Even working in a bar, working in a restaurant or a supermarket, dealing with those customers, that really builds your resilience. And resilience is a key skill that you need within production.
Okay, I think we'll do 3 more questions. This one is for you, Sam. Again, it's Eduardo's question of, I have 5 years of production experience in different areas of the media industry, TVCs, TV, agency world, etc. And I've struggled a lot to break into the VFX animation world. How can I get experience that would be considered for this without being in that specific side of the industry, which Ben sort of touched on, but this is someone who has experience. I'm currently a production coordinator at an agency, but I don't think this experience correlates to the same in VFX animation.
Well, I think, if first off, if you're feeling like it doesn't kind of translate, it definitely does. Like, I'm sure maybe the other panelists will agree. I think, if you're coordinating, regardless if it's within like that different side of the industry, it's still completely transferable. I'm sure you're still, dealing with multiple stakeholders and things like that. I can't speak for, obviously, personally towards your application as to why you're breaking in. I can, talk as a general of thumb. It could just be, we talk about the timing. It could be the influx of candidates. It could be, potentially it was filled because there was like, referral that got in front of that thing. So, without kind of knowing why potentially you have been able to break through, I would kind of just say potentially it's just that timing, right moment, because I definitely feel like it is transferable, unless any of the other panelists kind of have anything. If you have or not, potentially, the cover letter for my personal thing would be why you're wanting to go into VFX specifically. If that's like that added extra personal influx of, I'm interested in that and this is why, and I've got this skill set, when you're wanting to change that, if you haven't already done that. But yeah, I'm not sure if anyone else wants to add anything.
Something that's worth mentioning here, especially when it comes to VFX, is that the last 18 months have been quite challenging for the industry as a whole. So it's probably not typical of the usual environment when it comes to applying for roles in production or transitioning from outside visual effects into that world. We're all hoping that's going to return to normal as soon as possible.
Yeah, I would just like to comment, because I'm actually recruiting some sort of mid-level production roles for a client of mine at the moment. And I have had people apply from advertising and, post in different areas, and I know that they're not the kind of candidates that my client wants to see. So again, they want to see evidence of the fact that this job has been done before, that people have used shot grid, that they have, understand, the whole VFX pipeline and process, and they can come in and hit the ground running. So that's where they will always start. They will always start with people who have worked in VFX before, and they will only look more broadly if they can't find those people. So you're right, Ben, in an environment where, it's been hard for even people with VFX to get that sort of VFX job, it might be harder for people from other industries. I think also there's a sense of people not wanting to have to train. They're going, oh, I just want someone to come and step in. I don't want to have to train somebody. But I think at an entry-level role, sort of at a production coordinator or a production assistant role, those skills should be viewed as more transferable. But certainly as you go up the tree, you definitely need to have had that VFX experience. But I hear that reluctance. I have seen that reluctance from clients as well. They want to see the evidence in the resume.
Can I just add on in terms of if you're breaking in from a different industry, but you've got those transferable skills, you may start off in just, for example, a PA role, even though you've got a coordination role right now. But I think we all agree that what we find is if you can, and if you're thinking about making that transition, there's the financial side of you being prepared for that, because that is your responsibility, is that you will probably progress a lot faster than someone who has just graduated because you've got those transferable skills already. So that's just something to think about. I lied. We're going to do maybe 3 more other questions. I know we're on our last 2. So James has asked, how important are the type of schools and courses when applying for a job? And Lindsay, I'm going to throw this one to you. So how important are the type of schools and courses when applying for a job? That is, e.g., if your school is well known, is that important when you're applying for jobs?
I'd say in production, it's probably not the first thing I would look at. If someone has gone to a program that is known for production, it might be a nice to have. But I think especially for PA roles, I don't know that I would pay as much attention to that as I would just those kind of transferable skills, eagerness to get into the industry. I don't know that it would necessarily be the first thing that I would look at. That helps.
Yeah, thank you. This answers this question. Sorry, this question is asked in a couple of questions. When people are production assistants or production coordinators and they're from overseas and they happen to be working in Australia for a variety of reasons, or and they're also concerned about sponsorship. So why they may not get a role, is it because of the visa? Lindsay, if you want to continue like answering that question, that would be great.
It can be an issue for us. PA and coordinator roles aren't roles that we would currently offer sponsorship for, and that's simply because we can find local applicants that can meet that skill requirement that don't require that. So for us, it would be something that applicants would want to keep in mind.
Okay, great. Someone's asked if it's just general, and I'm going to answer this one, whether or not, or actually anyone can pipe in, if people can link in with you. And I would say yes. The thing is, if you're going to ever link in with someone, is to please put a, hi, I saw your recruiter panel, like have a bit more of an introduction. You could imagine that we get quite a lot of invitations to connect. So if you are going to connect with anyone, not just recruiters, it's always nice to have a little note rather than a blanket kind of just connect. So I would suggest doing that if you're going to link in with anybody. Okay, and sorry, that was the second last question. I am going to answer, sorry, who will I throw this to? I think Kirsty. I'm going to throw Yasha's. question is, I've got quite a lot of experience in many fields of entertainment, arts and broadcasting, also others from studies in the animation and VFX field. Still, somehow it always seems that companies don't know where to put me or which field to use me for. I was in the live broadcast manager for numerous TV stations, was building theatre stages and produced full shows, and many more things. This seems not to interest the company, sadly. Most applications just come back with the question of why I ever wanted to apply for a PA position with all my experience, and nobody wants to understand that this industry is new for me, and I want to gather the information needed to prevail and learn the VFX industry. Since this would be my first start, is there a way to still get companies excited, or a guide how to write differently so they don't overlook me and take the younger applications instead of me? I think that kind of encapsulates quite a lot of the other questions. So, Kirsty, it's again having lots of experience, tangent and I shouldn't say that word because I can't even say it, relevant, transferable within the entertainment industry, and starting a little bit later in life and not a recent grad in terms of age. So how else can get the recruiters excited, or to even get a look in and to sort of allay those fears of, well, why do you want to do it? Because you've worked across very different sized companies. So I think you see this quite a lot. Actually, all of the recruiters would, but Kirsty, if you want to start.
Sure, and it's a hard one. It's a really hard one. So I think first of all, make sure that, and you may already be doing this, I don't know, but just make sure that you tailor your resume to the job role. So the reason potentially that the companies aren't interested in all of your set building experience is because they're not hiring for a set builder. So that experience, even though it's incredible and has given you, has made you, and has created a whole bunch of experience that's really important to other parts of your life, it isn't necessarily relevant to what the studios are looking for in a production assistant. So make sure you read the job application, the job ad, if there is one, and then take out what might not be relevant. I know it's hard, but try and pull out the things that don't necessarily matter, and make sure that you build your resume as well as your cover letter by highlighting the skills that you've got that they will want and that do matter. So Excel, for example, project management, any kind of study that you might have done in project management, any experience that you might have had in project management, communications, problem solving with people, leading small teams, anything like that, and remove things which might not be relevant. Without knowing more about you and your particular history and background, that's probably what I can suggest first and foremost. It is often really hard to change careers midstream, really hard. And I wish it wasn't that hard, but it sometimes is. All I can do is remove what isn't relevant to the studio. So rather than seeing it from your point of view, try and flip it and see it from their point of view. So who would they want in that role? And try and make your resume that. So I hope that helps.
Well, thank you. I think we're going to wrap it up. We will send out the recording and links and answer a few more questions. I think we've kind of got the crux of it, but we'll go through it again anyway. So the recording will be sent out in the next couple of days. I'll just touch on something really quickly in terms of visas. If you're coming from overseas or thinking about going to Europe, is to look into the work and holiday visa or working holiday visa. So that is across different countries. So go onto the country you'd like to work in, onto their sites, the government sites, about their visas. I know some of you probably have already done that, but just a reminder. Enya, you should talk to Sam. Enya is currently on placement at RSP, so you can chat with her directly. And just to finish up with Kirsty's point is, we know that you would like what you would like to get out of those roles when you're applying and saying, I think this is a great opportunity for me. Just that slight change of, okay, well, what can you offer? Make it really easy for the recruiters to read through, rather than telling the story you want to tell us of why you think that you'd be so appropriate, but you're giving us quite a lot of your life story. So to keep it succinct is exactly the stick to what is in the advertisement. You're all storytellers in your own way, so you can tell that story. We know you are, but I think that's a great way to end, is the please, if you're if you're changing careers, you're starting off, then volunteer, help people out on school projects or film festivals. You can illustrate your interest. And we understand in today's day and age of having to earn money and the cost of living, you can still do things on the side where possible because you're interested in that. And it will show us if you volunteered at SIGGRAPH, South by Southwest, FMX, or wherever those opportunities might be, film festivals, then we can see that you are really motivated and you've taken that initiative. So thank you all again. Thank you to our wonderful panelists and our moderator, Bree, Ben, Lindsay, Kirsty, Sam. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day or evening, and thank you for attending. We hope you enjoyed it. And remember, if you're going to LinkedIn, just remind the recruiters where you know them from. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Patricia. Thanks, Bea. Bye, everyone.